From the realms of Middle-earth to the shores of the Undying Lands and the shadows over Mordor in between, this is Casterly Talk. I'm Ken Napzok, and we are about to dive into Episode 8, the season finale of the first season of Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. The director of this fine episode, Wayne Che Yip. Writers, Jennifer Hutchinson. Also working with J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay. Identities are revealed, truths are uncovered, and it is time to take some big steps forward on the journey. Unless you've got a friend, then that's an adventure. We've all had questions, and Episode 8 of the Rings of Power has answers, and even more questions. The finale took some swings as Galadriel's faced with a devastating truth. The Elves race against time, and the High King Google adds certain deadlines, or, we'll give you 3 months to craft those very rings we've been hearing all about, and the stranger starts to feel mighty familiar. Let's close out season 1 of Rings of Power as we have time to do that, a couple years, but not as much time on the show. I'm Ken Napzok, joined, luckily, fortunately, by Alden Diaz and Rachel Cushing Levine. And I'll say this up top before I welcome you all into the panel here. I am rushed. So if this deserves a 3-hour discussion, we might be about an hour. I'm heading out on the road, stand-up comedy getting in the way of my nerd talk again. I apologize, but don't worry. If you feel shortchanged by a shorter conversation, we're going to do a Q&A in the week or so after this episode live. You guys are going to interact with us because we're also not done necessarily processing what went down this episode. That is my opening manifesto, like I'm Nemec from Andor. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, I welcome another week's worth of digesting, because Alden and I just discussed while we were off air that we both immediately went back to episodes like 2 and 3 and started rewatching all the Halbrand scenes. So I want to do that. I think I want to do an entire series rewatch and really get down to how they structured this. Because at the end of the day, I'd said in a couple of our past discussions that I was like, the show is called Rings of Power. All right, show, you gave me Rings of Power. And I really, really liked how we got here. And there was some absolutely stellar, like best of this season moments in this episode. Tears, out loud exclamations. They answered a bunch of questions while still leaving us with wanting more. I honestly think they nailed the landing.
I agree with that. Not that there isn't questions,
right.
Lore leaps, all those kind of things. And I think in this world where nerd punditry sometimes goes the way of sports, you win or you lose, we like to find that middle. We see what's there. We engage with what's presented to us in the story. We celebrate what we love. We may be open and be open and honest with what we struggle with. And yeah, looking back, Alden, we have some reviewings of prior episodes to see, hey, that made me feel a certain way. Was I meant to feel that? Was I tricked into feeling that? Was I coerced? Was Sauron at work in the show itself? Hi, Alden.
Hey, Ken. And, I just want to say, while I'm processing my thoughts, I will be developing new rings so that you have more time in this world. That way we don't have to lose you so quickly again.
Thank you.
Exactly. That's one of my favorites, one of my specials. But yeah, it's definitely a case of some of the highest highs, period. And also, I think one of the most challenging for me of did I get duped along with characters, or did they do almost a meta duping that was almost the way that they do, like the way that people throw around the term emotionally manipulative, like specifically episode 5 now, which was my favorite up till this point, next to 7, has become a little bit of a sticking point. And I was up until 5:30, almost 6 Eastern, sitting there like, does the Numenor montage matter anymore? Does it change? But you know what? Maybe I'm supposed to be. And with a character who's one of his key monikers is the Deceiver, I guess maybe you have to go that far. But my goodness, I will say the good in this episode, I mean, it's all good, but the great, specifically the Hardfoots, I've shed tears at TV in recent years. I haven't ugly cried at TV in a long time. I was like full.
I had the tissue box right next to me.
It was amazing.
So true. I'm with you both on that. Yeah. And look, we're going to discuss it. Obviously, we're going to get to the big reveals, probably even more than the themes in this episode. There's a lot of, my list of themes is long, but we might not get to all of them because the reveals are so big and so important and do tie into the themes as always. But yeah, no, without giving spoilers for Andor and getting too into that, there was a thing that happened where you became attached to a moment, and then the context of it changed because the information changed. And sometimes it hurts your soul as a fan, where you're like, but I got invested in that. I was invested in those moments, and it hurts a little bit. And I think this episode, whether or not we were predicting that was Sauron all along, that was one of our leading predictions. It just, they did a good job. The manipulation was strong, and Rachel will begin with that. My overall reaction it's fast-paced with the lore. The show is very fast-paced with the lore. There was a great quote, 3 weeks for that labor that could take 3 centuries. Like, the show knows what it's doing. But I think it's well-paced in this show, and we've talked along the way about the legalities and what the words they can even say, what they have access to. It's very hard, and I get it. The Tolkien lore, more than any other lore, might be hard to separate from. Rachel, I think you've done a wonderful job of acknowledging what you struggle with, acknowledging the questions that you have, but also engaging with what is here. So I want to start here with the lore, the pace, and the big reveals. Where's your heart at right now?
Like I said up top, like it ticked all the boxes in ways that I thought they might, and then ways I never thought that they would go. And if we want to talk about some possible meta lines in the whole thing, the one that struck me was when Celebrimbor says, "How can we do more with less?" And I just, in my mind, I was like, that's the series. Yeah. They had a handful of pages in the appendices of Return of the King, and then some allusions to different things in the Silmarillion, but that's what they had to work with, and what they gave us to build upon that, to grant us surprises and fantastic new characters and twists, but still make it fit the lore and fit the feel that Tolkien wanted these stories to invoke. I mean, nailed it. Like, really. I mean, there's little things here and there, and like the mithril of it all, but it did what it needed to do. It did tie into, if the elves are fading, and they have to leave these shores, what can they do to stay? What can they do to prolong, to preserve all of that? And that's what the 3 elven rings do. Like, that was established in the lore, so that the fact that they just took this detour into Mithril to keep the dwarves involved and everything, but still come back to that point, which is a very important point about the elven rings and the elven culture and everything else. I was like, you did it. Like, you came up with a weird myth. Yes, you did. And, you can be nitpicky about it, but it still fulfills what Tolkien set out to say. Yeah. Well, and that, to me, is just a sign that these writers and these creators cared about what Tolkien had to say, but also let's find different ways to get there so that everybody can go on a journey, can go on an adventure through this season while we get to this point. I
really love what you just said there. I really do. I really think that was a great way. You've been open and honest all the way on this journey. This is something that this property has so many fans because it's moved so many lives. And look, Alden and I have less skin in this game. I don't have an Elvish tattoo anywhere. I don't have anything, like that. But Star Wars, there's other properties. I'm a big Douglas Adams Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fan, and sometimes there's different versions of the story. Some of them told by Douglas himself, and you kind of become attached to what you know. I maybe you don't have this answer right now, Rachel, but what is the challenge, particularly with Tolkien, where you've grown up with this and something new comes along and asks you to look at it in a different way? What is the challenge? Is it just simply letting it go to what you know, letting go of familiar? Is this sometimes moving off the trail of lore? Is it just an adventure some fans might be afraid to take because it might change what they knew in the past, and therefore they can't learn anything new?
Yeah, nicely done, by the way. It's especially when you attach yourself to a property from a young age, you always take things literally at their word. You read the word, that's the way it happened, that's the way these things are, that's the way these characters are. So when somebody comes along and changes that, immediately your hackles go up. That's not what they did. That's not what they were like. Right. But what they did, what they were like, was only sketched to a certain degree. And so as long as they do what they're supposed to do, and they eventually are like what they're supposed to be like, because Tolkien had intention with doing those things and writing those things, you can get around to it in different ways. And I mean, and Galadriel is such a brilliant example about it, because she was one of my favorite characters, regardless from reading since I was a little girl. She was never a warrior, though. And so this show comes along and does that. And a lot of people were like, no, that's just that that was not a thing. But I'm also a person that's like, strong female characters and character arcs, and not in three-dimensional, have faults, have arcs, all of that stuff. So if you do that, it's still, I'm sorry, I'm still going to process. You're still getting the heart. You're still getting the ideas and the themes and what Tolkien wanted these characters to be about. That's still there. Now they're just going about it different ways that don't necessarily contradict what was written, because it was thinly written. That's the thing. But it still can be, I get it. I get the knee jerk, like, that's not how that happened. Or you're playing with a chronology, or, you know, all of these things. I get it. I do. But I've always been somebody who understands adaptation, because I love books so much and I love movies and television so much. I'm the first one to say, what works on a page doesn't work on a screen. And they both have valid ways of telling stories, and they're both valid ways for you to take them in, if that makes sense. So, and they're each their own. And look, if you like the books and the show's changes are too much for you, the books are still there. Those characters, those stories, everything about that is still there. You can still love those. And this interpretation is just your cup of tea. You know what? I can understand that, as long as it's not about you being mad about a black elf, because that just knocks you off.
Then you're done. Then you're done. Now, I mean, just to build on that, like my comment is, Adam West is my Batman as much as Robert Pattinson's my Batman. They're Batman. Like that's. It's if the soul is the same. Now we can debate when I feel that soul is lost. There are some recent films in that regard that I would argue did that. And that's the nitty gritty. But Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy and the animated Hobbit are both Hobbit to me, and they're very different. So different. Celebrimbor, some people's Celebrimbor is the video game Celebrimbor, and they don't know better, because that was a game that was a hit. And there you go. But what is it saying? You know, we talked about those rings, the building of the rings, and then the actual ins and outs of the construction, to the point of where you get into the mythical alchemical mechanics of one. There, Celebrimbor says, well, that is a problem that we don't have, because I think their original plan, it sounded like, was to give every elf a pocket watch sized piece. And then that doesn't work. Okay, well, we can do a big thing. That's not going to work. We have nothing except this. So can we put it on a being that is so powerful that they're basically trying to turn Gil-galad into a Wi-Fi router in the most like base terms. Like, can we get someone to emanate it out? And to explain that runs the risk, and they wrote it so well, but it runs the risk of, are we putting how over why, which you talk about with Joseph and Jennifer on Force Center all the time, Ken, like, okay, you're telling me all this, but where's the personal element of this? And then to add it was going to be 2, and it's 3 because of the horror she just experienced. It's 3 because of the security that she knows they need. It's 3 because she wants in on it and she's trying to own what she feels is a mistake. It's 3 because it's personal, and it is forged with Finrod's legacy because it's personal. That is like this big like fantasy. This is the magic idea, but then it's still people, and I just loved that.
Yeah, I think in the phrase letter of the law versus spirit of the law, or anything related to that kind of idea comes to mind here, where the spirit is there. Again, there's going to be moments that you might quibble with, moments you might have questions with, and I think I just always in this nerd punditry world, I just try to get people to not gatekeep themselves out of any potential joy, and I think this series,
that happens.
Yeah, it happens, and not maliciously, and not. There's some people who want to go out and take other people's joy, but other people might shut up. But again, not everything is for you. That's an opening statement, but we got some bigger things to get to. We got big things to get to. All right, we got big reveals. We got, I don't know, the stranger as a wizard. We're going to talk about that. Not quite Gandalf, Blue Wizard still. Is there still room? There's definitely some stuff that it seems very familiar. We got the death of Tar Palantir, and also the revelation. I like that he's been taking hits off the Palantir. I like that as well. And discussing that. Gil-galad turning down the crown. You talked about that, not wanting to be a Wi-Fi router. But, this big one here. Vegas odds had Halbrand leading in the Sauron pool. There were some great doubts. There were some moments of how are we going to get here? Witch King theories. Alden, we were talking about that. You were behind that one as well. But Sauron is the answer, was the answer. Appears that it was always the answer. Let's dive into this big reveal. Rachel, I'll start with you because the relation to Galadriel and Sauron and their connection and the words he was saying, man, it was, I loved it, even though it also made me look back at what I had already accepted. So far.
Yeah, this was the highlight for me. I never cared about being justified in having that theory or anything else. Yeah. What mattered the most to me was that it worked. And that's why I went back and rewatched a handful of early Halbrand scenes and their interactions with each other. Because the best part of this episode, in my opinion, is when he gets into her mind and he is attempting to manipulate her, to coax her into accepting his viewpoint, his outlook on this. Like every great villain, he thinks he's the hero because he wants to heal Middle Earth. And there is some precedent in Tolkien's writing that Sauron might have been willing to repent after Morgoth was captured. Now, it could have been out of fear. Tolkien wrote it pretty obliquely, so it's not sure. But the idea that he was a Maya first, he was a good soul that was corrupted, and with the death and the defeat of the big bad, where does Sauron see himself? What does he find himself wanting to do? And I like that, much like this entire show, even Sauron is not pure evil, at least not yet, or there was room in there. And that room was where we all fell for Halbrand. Because I think that some of those moments are genuine. I think he does feel some kind of connection with Galadriel because of things that they have done and gone through and the way that they look at things. I think that's actually genuine. I don't think that was entirely manipulation on his part. And so when you get to this sequence where you're going through her memories and he is just twisting and talking in such a way that you almost could see her falling for it. And then the shot of all shots when they're on the raft and he says, look down, and it turns and you see the possible future. Because this episode is so much talking about reconciling past and possible future. That happens in a number of storylines. Yeah. And you see the Galadriel that now we all remember from Fellowship and even the Hobbit films. And he uses the lines of dialogue from her, the foundations of the earth. I was just I was screaming. I was like, this is everything. This is such the exact way Sauron would have gone about it, because he is the deceiver. He is the manipulator. He appears as a friend, and what he says sounds good, sounds right. And everybody has to reconcile with that. And the way that she does is it just, in her acting, she's so torn and she's crying, talking to her brother, but it's not her brother and she has to resist. And the calling back to the brother, you have to touch the dark to know the light. And if it's upside down, how do you tell which is which? And then the shot. And then I was just give me all of this. And
it's really, by the time you get to Fellowship now, it's during her test,
totally differently. If you watch this.
So she's not just it's not just a test that came out of nowhere. It's was he right?
Yeah,
thousands of years later, was he right? Which is freaky and weird. And Ken, we love a join me scene. There's how many join me scenes have we seen across that other fantasy show? I think I already did. I
want to jump in here and Alden, I bring in here and Rachel, by all means, more on the way. I love all the things you're saying here, and it was so effective. because every line Halbrand says is true from a certain point of view, right? To talk about another wizard sitting on a log. If even the line here, I'll never forget that, and I'll see to it that no one else does either.
I know, so ominous.
Go back, and you guys are you both are already doing this. You're going back and looking, and that's going to be part of the fun. It is not just about the reveal; it's about the journey there. We always said if Sauron was the answer and Halbrand was the answer, then it is about, hey, it's not the mystery; it's how everyone reacts to maybe the mystery of the journey there. That's there. But one of the things there's already some theories out there, and I actually kind of like it, but I think it. Like all conspiracy theories, it removes yourself from dealing with the actual truth. Did Halbrand actually die there? And Sauron, who's maybe already hanging out there, slides in and takes his place. I've already started to see that kind of out there, and that's comforting. But I think it lessens the impact because of what you're saying, Rachel. Halbrand, I think, does have some moments along the way that are very sincere. That's why it hurts for Galadriel. That's why it hurts for us. That is why when our trust is played with, it's going to cut even deeper. And I think that's why I think a lot of their interactions, I think along the way, whether he viewed her in a certain way from the beginning, but then comes to grow, that scene sitting on the log after the big fight, I do think it was all real. And I think not that he would necessarily had a super struggle, which way do I go, light and dark, but just that, he was feeling things and he believes his story from a certain point of view. He believes he wants to heal through power. So that's why they both felt something real. And Alden, it hurts even deeper because of it.
It does. I mean, all the embargoed interviews now with the performers come out, and he talks about in his audition that he got something, he got Shakespeare and he got Paradise Lost. And he's like, and I was Satan. I was doing the Satan monologue in my audition, and he didn't know he was Halbrand. I was saying off air, Rachel, before you joined the call, that he didn't know he was Sauron until they were filming episode 3. They shot 2 full ones, took the COVID break. He came back from the COVID break, and they told him. And so for that to still be cohesive is a feat in of itself. And in the Lucifer sort of analog there, like he can never be, and they've already thrown out Tony Soprano and Walter White in their conversations, which are that to me, I think, is talking about iconicness, iconic quality, not necessarily arc, but it's that idea of we should never get to the point where we're like, Kylo Renning it of he can come back. I still have faith. No, we need to lose faith at some point, especially as he approaches that. But to understand, like what you said, Rachel, that he was this guy. He comes from the same plane as Gandalf and as Radagast, like not the same status, but the same, still Valinor, still the Beyond. Like he was once this being, and to be able to play that in to his ideology and his methodology, to connect it back to thematically to Adar, but also to have Celebrimbor unknowingly quoting Adar's descriptions of what he was going to do. Morphith playing the realizations is genius. That all works so well. I was saying off air, I struggle a little bit, and I alluded to it already, with episode 5 specifically, of the throwing down the pendant and then picking it up and then the very righteous ending, because there are no other characters there. It's not like that thing we don't want to spoil in Andor or like in other things where there are other characters. It's not like the Shrieking Shack and Prisoner of Azkaban, where you could make an argument that Thulis and Gary Oldman are playing that a little too villainous, but they're in on something that we're not, and we're the kids. There's no one around in some of Halbrand's things that I think are a little like, it's kind of like Han and Leia saying our son, our son, our son in Force Awakens, because parents don't talk like that. So there's a little bit of that, like the show is doing it more than the characters are. This is makers and us, not
no witnesses. Why is he acting?
No witnesses. Yeah, why are you doing that? There's a little bit of that I struggle with, but they sold it so well here that they've sort of earned any, like, I'll give you that. Like they've earned that mulligan, and it's so in the distance now. And now you can recontextualize that as, is he deciding on what phase of the villain plan am I going into? Like, is it, am I going to work on Farazan and these people, or is this the better route now? That's what that now plays as, regardless of Bear McCreary's score being beautiful and heavenly. Now that's what that is.
Yeah, and you're hurt, Alden. Alden, you're hurt.
That's what it is. I really think I am, and I'm hurt. And I saw when the raft shot turned upside down. I heard the 1,000 fanfics being written, and it's like sometimes which is fine, by the way. I don't want, that's not a shot. It's just, they're hot. They're really hot. They are. There's that moment when you are doing nerd punditry stuff where you get lost for a second because you know that you have to process it and have an opinion, but then you get mad at yourself for not staying in it because you're in it. So you end up in a back and forth. Like I'm watching that and I'm like when he said consider it a gift, I was like, all right, we're in. Like this is it, the Lord of Gifts. And I started being out of the episode. And I kept saying, stop.
Oh, gotcha.
Let it be what it is. Let it be what it is. They haven't done the reveal yet. And once I really got in on that second watch, it worked so beautifully because of character, because of the stuff we talked about with Galadriel, because she gave her sword to Theo in the last one and acknowledged who she used to be and started to become Galadriel, the sister and wife and dancer and all those things again. But melting Finrod's dagger was sort of the screw you to Sauron in a lot of ways of like, I'm no longer a singular being meant for killing you. I can be other things.
Yeah. She this is someone who could not give up the fight, could not stop. Yeah, I think that's a great point there. Rachel, some of your, I want to go back to you, but just talk about more of this there. There's some moments that I love, that him crying, Sauron crying with relief, and retelling Morgoth's death, right? And then I had to heal everything. And he's actually crying there. Talk about sincere feelings. That was one of my favorite moments. His line, our past meant nothing, wait against our future. You kind of said that playing with the idea of redemption. Any other moments kind of tug on your heartstrings? Are you hurt, Rachel? Are you hurt?
Yeah, I mean, just because of the hope that he actually did sort of instill in her. And also, I was just thinking about the Southlanders and Arondir and Bronwyn and Theo. Like the last time they saw him, they were cheering their king, and now the loss of that, and it's just an idea of it's manipulation, but it's also genuine. And I don't think, as Alden was alluding to, I don't think Sauron had a point-by-point plan. He didn't know he was going to find Galadriel in the ocean. He didn't know that they were going to get picked up and brought to Numenor. He knows he wants Mordor to be unleashed. He knows he has an enemy in Adar, and he knows he wants to create some sort of power, not of flesh, but over flesh, something from the unseen world. We know that has been a goal. So when he was in Numenor, I actually thought that maybe he was thinking, these are the smiths that I can find a way to create this. But Galadriel has, convinced the Numenorians to send an army to Mordor. So what's the better choice for me to do right now?
Yeah. And is he also consumed by vengeance?
I mean, obviously, he and Adar had a fight. Yeah. Adar thought he killed him.
He thought he killed him.
So, not the case, but
is he doing to Adar what Galadriel's doing to him?
Yeah.
And that those parallels. I mean, you're obviously our lore master, and there's tons of like Tolkien experts and threads that I've been reading about how an argument can be made that if he's the Joker, Galadriel's Batman. Like if you have to pick a Sauron arch nemesis, it's her. That she might be the being that he's the most afraid of. Peter Jackson had that great thing in The Hobbit, I think in the third one, where she shows up and just without swords, just blasts him away and halts his progress in that moment. And she's the only one that can, even above Saruman and Elrond in that moment. And so to see that sort of play out, it's sort of like, it doesn't go as far as, we're not so different, you and I. It's not that mustache twirling, but it's all laid out. Like it's all there.
Yeah. I for one enjoyed this strong connection between them, including some of the heat in a way. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's I'm going to write my romantic fanfic there, Alden, but I felt the connection all the way around was real, recognizing kindred spirit in the other person, and that's part of the pain that goes on here. And the recontextualize it. It's so funny because again, legally not connected to the Jackson world. We have those discussions again. We've had them before. But you both talked about it. But watching Jackson's trilogy, especially the opening, you're gonna see it differently. Watching her get tested by Frodo, you're gonna see it differently. I love that. I love that. I love that when a series like Kenobi can do that. I love that when series like something that I grew up with New Hope, and I can have new context to experience it with my heart first more than my brain. I love that. And I think it sounds like, Rachel, this right now is having that effect, even though you're still processing a lot of it with.
Yeah, because what it looks like to me, and what I always understood from the books, but I do think the show is really grasping the idea that the elves will eventually pass the torch to humans and hobbits to do the thing that they weren't ever able to do. And so this is showing the elves in, more of a heyday than in the Third Age, where basically they're relegated to 3 realms. Guess what? 3 rings that are prolonging their life and giving them the chance to stay in Middle Earth for at least a little bit longer, clinging to that. Yeah. Here we see that we have Region and Lyndon and all of the culture and their strength and beauty and power, and we see it start to fall, but they find a way to stem that tide, and they, I'm sure, are thinking so that it gives them the time to do what they still haven't been able to do, which is defeat this evil. But knowing what we know in the Fellowship, and then what happens in the Third Age, I love the idea of they fight the fight until they can't anymore, and then they pass the torch to what to probably a very unsuspecting, like they don't have a high opinion of men, and they're not even aware of Hardfoots and later hobbits.
They don't just pass it to. It's not like they pass it to Numenorians. It's low men,
right? Yeah,
as Gil-galad says, the low man. He's so good. He's amazing.
It's fun because the end, so you can see the arc starting to play out in that way, much as we can see the arcs playing out for Galadriel and for Elrond and everything else. So,
sorry, actually, we have a King Durin III in the comments says he will not help them cheat death, Rachel. So he doesn't care.
King Durin III has left the conversation. Again, the time remaining, we still got plenty of time left here, but I apologize for moving along a bit. I do want to talk about the Stranger. We want to get to that. The Hardfoots. I too was shedding tears at that. We always love discussing the themes, and this is the Sauron stuff. I'm calling him Sauron because I have to accept that I have to let go that good guy, that Halbrand. I
think that's why they did the hashtag. He's the only character that has a hashtag emoji, and they were like, "No more Halbrand."
Yeah, he was a good dude. He's a good dude. A lot of themes come rolling out of this, and maybe can help lead us into the conversation about the Stranger. But the idea of pride and power, healing versus controlling, save or rule. I see no differences, Sauron. There. The idea your actions, not your name. That's big in fantasy stuff. That's big in hero's journey stuff. Your name, your family, what people tell you are is not who you are and not who you have to be. I love Nori's line was one of the best. What a great fantasy myth line. Only you can show what you are. You choose by what you do. I love that moment. Nori stuff is always hidden. So a lot of that there, and there's some bigger things going on. Death, endings, stepping forward versus accepting your fate. Sacrifice. You mentioned Alden Galadriel's sacrifice there, giving up Finrod's dagger. A lot of big things there. Anything you guys just gravitated to as well with these themes as we start looking towards the Stranger?
Yeah, I thought there was a lot of talk about reconciling the past and the present. Tar Palantir talking about not being able to tell the difference anymore within the Palantir. That's what Sauron's talking about. Like, he even says to Galadriel, "You told me I could let go of the past. You told me that, and in order to look to the future." Just another great twist of everything that they had been through and how she saw it versus how he is now stating a different perspective on it, if you will.
Sauron is media literate, much like Rhaenyra in House of the Dragon. Sauron watched.
But I really loved that idea and it ties into choice too, because so often the characters are saying trusting in a higher power, things are laid out the way they are. I mean, you could even say the mystics, just making this assumption like falling star, that's Sauron, without understanding that choice and interpretation of past and hope for the future all is wrapped up in you can make a difference. You can make a different choice and change potentially the path forward. And I liked how it touched on like all of them And then the theme that you talked about, sacrifice, I was thinking about cost because of what Miriel and Elendil talk about. A little bit of heat, just gonna put that out there. Like that seemed like a real moment. But anyway, they say that the way of the faithful is committing to pay the price, even if the cost cannot be known, and trust that in the end it will be worth it. And for Elendil, the cost has already been astronomical. Honestly, Miriel as well, so and that is the case in all of the stories. I mean, even though they helped the stranger, Sadok didn't make it. And and then you have the reveal with Sauron and everything. So there's always a cost, but you still make the choice. You still make your feet go where your heart might not want to, because it's the right choice. And all of the stories, like, they have done such a good job of making all of the stories mirror each other in these themes and in these terms. And just, I honestly, first episode aside, I think the writing has been spectacular.
No, they really got it. It just feels so grand, but also those really human themes are always there. Like this, it is appropriately quotable, and the speechifying is beautiful, and it just feels right. And that is as much of Lord of the Rings fandom as it is in Star Wars fandom.
I was just gonna say that, because what I love, Galadriel says all I could do was swim and pray. I'd chosen wisely, and in saying that, I was thinking, man, this series all the way through just had wonderful quotable lines, which is why I do go to Lord of the Rings when I'm down and I'm depressed. I want to see Elrond give the sword to Aragorn. That scene lifts me up, and it's like I don't have the tattoo yet, Rachel, but like the lines. That's part of the reason we come to this stuff. That's why this works. Is not just pop culture, but our culture. It is modern myths. It is storytelling. It is things that affect our lives. That's why we're here. I'm not here for reactions. I'm not here just for mystery box stuff. Sauron is doing the deep dive podcast, which scares me, Alden. He's not doing a reaction video. I'm not there for stuff.
Sauron has the actually the Jedi were the villains. That's his take for sure. Yeah, no, it's
taking these shows in on the surface level just flitters away. It's nothing to me. But the line and making them quotable and taking them with you, and God, it's beautiful stuff. I really like that you pointed that out. That is one of the reasons to buy a ticket.
Absolutely. I mean, and moving into that Nori Stranger stuff even more, like with the idea of choice, and the second or third time I brought up Batman in this episode, that's the core of the Bale version. It's what I do that defines me. It's not who I am underneath. And for Nori to also be media literate, knowing that staff looks good, like we're in an RPG, like here, take this, do something. Like here's a piece of equipment that can be useful. That moment of I'm good. Is it very, very modern and very TV? Yes. Do I care? No. That whole moment of the Istar, and then the hero shot. Boom. Like that was and you're immediately, if you know what Istar means, you're like you're processing the fact that it's just been said. So now we have narrowed our options down from anything to 5. And it's like, wow. And the way that Daniel Wayman, right? Daniel Wayman, the way he steps into the fully unlocked version of the performance, where it's slowly bubbling and it's fearful, and then when he's on the ground, it's that they showed me what I am. But then when he stands up, he didn't go full on go back to the shadow like he could have. He's not. He didn't play his hand and I think he doesn't even know who he is, according to interviews.
He's saying in interviews that are just released. This week. You're right. He's like, I haven't even shot my stuff in season 2 yet. I don't know.
Yeah, which always fun to see if it's a misdirect, and we'll laugh about it later. But that when he said you come from shadow, you rose from shadow.
From shadow you came, to shadow I bid you return. Yeah, it's just enough of a twist on the Balrog.
Exactly. By the way, Rachel didn't write these down. She just already knows them. The whole energy there was so powerful, and to validate Nori, and that she was right, that these people were right, that the small folk saw things that you didn't see, is part of why you love Lord of the Rings, particularly as a child. Like one of my most formative memories is seeing Pippin save Faramir, and they're gonna burn him alive. Like I remember as a child being like, would somebody listen? Like, because they get it. They have the closer to the ground perspective, literally and thematically. And the fact that she was able to this whole time to believe, and that the show never went to and now they have a problem with each other because of his accidental, freezing of her arm and stuff. Like it never went to easy places. It kept the integrity of the character, and she was able to change the community around her.
Yeah.
And seeing them send her off collectively, it wasn't just the family, it was everyone.
Her mother.
Oh,
be careful. And the mother's no. Marigold is no. You'll be bold.
You'll be bold. Broke me. And the way that it goes back to like go see where the sparrows learn their songs, and I was a mess.
Well, I was packing this morning. I watched episode 1 again, just to kind of be like, I know there's a lot of callbacks. Let me relive it, and I started to get emotional again on that, just seeing like the full arc of Nori and Poppy. Everyone, the Harfoots.
Oh my God,
the Poppy. Why does everyone I love always leave?
Oh God.
And I really thought that they were gonna. I know that they set her up as like the new trail finder, which I'm okay with, but like. How can we not see Nori as Frodo and Poppy as Sam? And I'm like, you take your Sam with you. Like, I was actually kind of mad that Poppy didn't go with them.
It's a weird instance, and I was talking to Nikki about this in our 3 a.m. conversation about the episode. It's an interesting, almost unprecedented thing. I mean, maybe like Star Trek or something has in one of the series. I haven't seen in full, but the idea of we had a storyline, and now literally everyone except 2 people are off the board theoretically, like at least for a while. Like all these Hardfoots just went to recurring minor character status, and I am really going to miss them. Like they endeared me to the entire culture in 8 episodes, which in total is maybe a couple of hours of combined Hardfoot stuff.
Yeah, the first one you really see is Sadok, going back to episode 1, and to lose him here. Lenny Henry just did a wonderful job. Gonna miss that character. Indeed, it got me too. But yeah, the Poppy stuff. Yeah, I'm with you too, Rachel. I get it. Like, congratulations on the promotion. Go hang out with Nori. But let's talk. We're gonna get too far into this and not really talk about this reveal. I really like the play on it. You got the Dweller, the Ascetic, and the Nomad. Who are the what I used to call the Icelandic pop band following around the stranger. And we start right away. Rachel, I love that what you said. They think he's Sauron because they just can't comprehend choice and factoring into your journey. That you are who we think you are, what you were. You guys know the theme there I'm playing with. So I love the real. I love the swerve and everything about it. I'm on board, regardless of who it might end up being. Is it Gandalf now the leader in the clubhouse? Yes, but now we have a little room to debate that going forward. But Rachel, just the reveal along the way, the sensing with the nose, the almost quoting things. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I have to say that like I was like, all right, they're leaning real hard, Gandalf, and then I got to 95% sure he's Gandalf when he says, "When in doubt, follow your nose." I was like, geez, like that. There it is. I suppose, like I said, there's still maybe a 5% chance it is one of the other wizards, especially because they're going so far east, and that is where the blue wizards went. Right. This is messing with the chronology. If you're going to say this is Gandalf, this is not how Gandalf arrived on the shores of Middle Earth. I don't know yet if that's an okay change. I think it probably would be, but it's certainly a bold one, and that's one of the things that the show has definitely been bold about, which is changing the not so much the chronology, but like the compression of the years and different things happening concurrently. So this very well could work, but I am very excited to see them go to Rune, because that is a land we read about, we know exists, have never seen. Tolkien did not go into a lot of detail about the people there, the different things there. And I love that the show has this now opportunity to explore a completely new corner of Middle Earth. And within that, help, if this is Gandalf, help him develop into Gandalf. And also there's so many things. I mean, the fact that if this is Gandalf, that his very first, memories involve Harfoots. goes a long way to explain how much why he loves hobbits, and the next age and everything else. Like, it does work. I know I was at the beginning saying I didn't want it to be Gandalf. I wanted it to be to explore something a little bit newer, like a blue wizard, but I can't deny that they have done well by the character in terms of developing him to this place and to being the Gandalf that we all know and love, again, in the Lord of the Rings films. So
saying some great things here, and then I'll get you in on this stuff. But like the Blue Wizard thing, going to Rune's great. If they could also swing by the Shadow by a Shy in George Martin's world, kind of go to places that we hear about a lot. But
that'd be great.
Swing in, pick up Melisandre, and head on up. I like the idea of it still, the possibility of being a Blue Wizard, something different. But I was pulling back a little bit. If you're just swinging through, if you're just a Jackson fan, maybe you read the books as a kid, whatever, or you're just like, hey, I hear about this fantasy show, I'm going to check it out. I've heard about these characters. If it isn't Gandalf in season 2, and we wait 2 years for that, I think there's going to be a lot of disappointment of, well, where's the all-star team I'm familiar with? And I'm not saying that's how you approach it. I'm not saying that's what the show did. Well, we got to have some all-stars. It's going to be interesting if the reveal is not that, because it's building towards that, and then they're playing it, I think, in a good way. I think they're giving it a different story, but it's all going to make sense for this world, this part of the story. I have that thought in my head of just like, cool, surprise, it's Blue Wizard number 2. You'd be like, wow, I wanted Gandalf.
A
lot of the general fans, and this show can only get bigger with the love of general fans. So I don't know, it's food for thought on how
there. And there's also, even for us lore people, like all the little things, like he's going to end up with one of the Elven rings. We know eventually Galadriel, Elrond, and Gandalf will get them, and Gandalf gets Narya, which is the Ring of Fire. And fire played such a crucial role in that honestly great fantasy fight sequence. I really thought that was very well done. We don't get to see a lot of magic like that in Middle-earth. We only got hints of it from the wizards. So to see a full-blown fight in that way, and then just to see the Harfoots play what part they could in that, just throwing rocks and stuff like that. I was like, oh, this is great.
Bird calls.
The Dweller the bird calls that the Dweller getting hit with a rock was like, clunk.
Dude, Sadok with the last minute foot stab was amazing. I just cheered.
Enough to like hold them off until the stranger, took a hold of himself and made the choice, which is wonderful. That's exactly all they would be able to do in that situation. They didn't become like heroes overnight and great fighters, but I think that there's all these little things that really lead us to this being Gandalf, and just taking a different road with him in terms of his character. And if he goes off to Rune for an extended period of time and then does not come back, then he is arriving in Middle-earth closer to when he's supposed to, in theory. And then again, for the casual viewers and everybody else, they like the touchstones. You have a Galadriel, you have an Elrond, and now it looks like you probably have a Gandalf. So now you have characters to track into the stories that the movies that So
great approach. Rachel says, hey, she threw that big yet in there. We'll see yet, and being open to what's happened. I think that's important. But Alden, that's where our thoughts are. Where are yours on Gandalf? Maybe?
Yeah, for about 12 hours now, I've been down a wizard rabbit hole on the internet, and I am now a Gandalf. I am what I am calling a Gandalf the Blue or Bludalf truther. Where a theory has come up that I adore, which was, and again, we'll get more into this in the live episode. I'm not going to go into the whole thing here, but Rachel, as you well know, way better than I, Gandalf as a Lauren, his godly name, his actual true name before all the other ones, was afraid of being sent down to help, didn't want to go, was afraid of Sauron, thought he was weak, and that's why, all more the reason why you should go, which, very classic in those themes. People have theorized, what if he did come down once before the Third Age and got destroyed? Like, what if he loses in season 3 or 4 of this show, season 5, and he's died and come back and changed a color before? That they could be combining, and then somebody pulled up this from Tolkien's last writings in the Peoples of Middle-earth, that he revisited the issue specifically of the blue and said, yes, the 3 core ones did stay in Third Age. That doesn't change. However, The blue might have come, quote, in the history of the Second Age and Third Age and weakening and disarraying the forces of the East, who would have been both in the Second and Third Ages and would have helped exactly with what we are dealing with in this show. So could this be Gandalf the Blue? Could this be Olorin the Blue? And then he's gone, and it was, he carries his connection with him into the afterlife and a greater return. It feels like they could set themselves up for something direct, something very roundabout, like, well, I did kind of leave and return, kind of like what you were saying, Rachel, with I left this region and then arrived again. And or is this going to be some sort of really clever amalgam? Is this going to play with everything that they can feasibly play with? Is really interesting to me. And I love that he's so far, it's like when they said Istar and his energy came out and it was white, I was like, oh God, Saruman. Like I had that moment because Saruman the White. But then I know where he is. Like you pointed out in our last episode, Rachel, he's where Radagast will eventually be. Yeah. But then he's doing Gandalf things and there's a moth. And then it's like, but you're going to Rune, which is where the blue guys go. So they've made all these cases with Gandalf being the top case. But I think that almost like saying, yeah, Gandalf's story happened the way you remembered and we're not changing anything. However, there's a Gandalf secret origin that happened that is in there if you want it. I think is a really interesting thing because it thematically enhances so much, like we were talking about with like Obi-Wan Kenobi and how it changes the way we watch things. Like, why would he see something in Bilbo Baggins that Bilbo Baggins didn't see in himself? Because of people like this, because of people like Nori. And Nori answers the call in a much easier, more like she has that almost Luke Skywalker quality of like, I want to go with you to Alderaan and become a Jedi like my father. Like she answers that call way easier than Bilbo will, and Frodo's answering the call is a necessity. It's there's a dread that hangs over what they have to do, whereas this comes down to friendship. I mean, this is the wholesome version of Arya and the Hound that I didn't know I needed. Like, this is going to fill that hole. I want to watch this guy walk around with his 2 feet sidekick, eating food. Where's Rune? You know where Rune is? Like, I would watch a whole show of that because it's so well performed.
Absolutely. Hopefully some chicken is consumed. A lot there. Good stuff. Alden indeed. Yeah, I'm open to it. I'm seeing it. See where it goes. I like the certain point of view false start idea, but we'll see where it goes there. Any thoughts on that, Rachel, before we start to wrap up this episode? Again, apologize, has to be quicker today. That's on me. But a wizard arrives exactly when he means to. So we'll arrive at a live Q&A next
to do comedy.
Yes. No, we'll all have time to process more and have a really great episode next week with involving the fans and stuff too. But but yeah, like here's the thing. The show has proven that it will swerve off the track, but still end up where it needs to in terms of staying true to Tolkien. So if they did it with Halbrand and they did it with Mithril and those stories and still landed where we needed to be, then I have no doubt they could do that with Gandalf in any number of ways. This theory certainly being a possible one of them. The idea of the Maya dying, but then taking on another body and coming over again is certainly plausible. And I can see why people have come up with that idea. So I think that the whole thing is this show is in some ways very much about all of us knowing certain plot points and certain characters and whatnot, and therefore playing the guessing game and who is Sauron. And I'm sure we're going to be like getting new characters and be like, well, who's going to be the Witch King? Who's going to be the King of the Dead? Like, because those were brought up and now no longer will be Halbrand, we'll be playing the same game.
We're already on Celeborn Watch 2024.
Yes, absolutely. It's all fun. But at the end of the day, it's not even close to the main reason why I'm watching. It's not the point of the show. The show is not doing a Westworld where like all they care about is giving you twist after twist after twist, because we don't want you to guess ahead of time. That's not what these writers are considering and thinking about. And that's why I really, really love the balance of that. So we're going to have fun. Is it definitely Gandalf? Certainly seems like it, but you never know. And in the end, if it is or isn't, it is not going to lessen my enjoyment of it all, because it's not based on whether or not I can guess things in advance. It's based on the journey that they take to get us there. And if they do it right, a la Halbrand, I'm in.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Beautifully said.
Yeah, beautifully said. As always, and as if you've done for all seasons, it's just invaluable having Rachel here for these discussions, because this world is in her heart, and it helps us get through these discussions. But Alden, you and I, we wear our passions on our sleeves for these stories, these themes, these things that move us. As we start to wrap up here, looking back here in season 1, where's your heart right now? As we have to wait about 2 years.
I don't even like hearing that, Ken. I really don't. It's legitimately what a first world problem. But it is frustrating because I think this is the most high pressure scenario that has existed in the television landscape since The Mandalorian. That had to be proof positive that could work in television. This had to be proof positive that this could work in television. And it was a deeper, more complex, more already populated, and like Mandalorian had the freedom to be original. This had the freedom to be 60% original, like 50, 55. Like this was a high pressure do or die on these 8 episodes that if this did not work, of course we would have always found things to love. Like we want to look for the good. If the writing here was terrible, I would still be able to say, but I love those actors. Like I will always look for the thing. But the fact that they made it sing so beautifully, the fact that I can get to a scene at the end, which we'll talk about more in full when we have time later on in a future episode, but Elrond figuring it out and not saying anything. Celebrimbor's too busy being like, I'm awesome. So forget that for a second. Like he's too busy like, hell yeah. And like everyone else is like, by the way, if you know anything about Celebrimbor history, which I have taken the YouTube deep dive into, bad times ahead for that guy. And he is so smug that it is going to be very interesting to see how it goes down. But the relationship between these friends, the reunion, so beautiful. The way that came back from pilot to finale of they're together, what trust is, that because I'm asking more of you, that is going to take the trust that we said we had, that, and then to be challenged on that cliffhanger. And does Galadriel clock that he knows what she knows? Or is she just beginning to? There's those questions that are fun to play with, but the souls of the characters is what mattered. And if you could make me feel the same way that I felt when we left the Council of Elrond in that first movie, then when I was like, I love these people together. And that's what I felt every single episode. And every time I didn't have somebody, like I didn't have Arondir and Bronwyn and Theo, or the Dwarven family. I didn't have any of them this episode, and I missed them. And that I felt my heart telling me, but is Durin okay? Has he talked to his dad? Like, and that's a success.
Durin's fate is down there. Yeah, that's a success. I stepped on your last line there, but I agree with that there. I'll give Rachel the final word here as we look back on season 1 and in a brief fashion. We'll do, like we keep saying, a live Q&A next week. And we're not necessarily done talking about Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power here on Casterly Talk, a Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire first podcast. But hey, this is now part of what we do here. Yeah, this season you mentioned, Alden, I really do agree. I think this was one of the highest in terms of pressure. This is one of the highest bars faced by any television show, even over House of the Dragon, which if that fails, like the answer would be like, well, of course, Game of Thrones was this phenomenon. How could you recapture that? House of Dragon's doing its own thing. It's going pretty strong. That Mandalorian didn't just have to do something for the Star Wars world, live action TV. It had to make Bob Iger's dream of Disney Plus a reality. It had to get off the ground. A lot of pressure there. But this one doesn't just have the $750 million budget for the series. It doesn't have Jeff Bezos from his space rocket looking down saying, make it so. It had the pressure of decades of fandom, decades of lore, decades of Tolkien lore heads. And I mean that with the most affection I can put into those words. Jackson's movies, the animated movies, whatever. The people with tattoos, the people like me, my fiance Grace, the first gift I ever gave her was Aragorn's sword sitting in our living room. Just anyone wants to come in, we got a sword ready for you. The pressure was immense, and this show didn't hit for everyone. It's never going to. It took some big swings. That means you might miss some, but I think at the end of the day, it felt cinematic, and I felt inspired, and I can't wait for the next chapter. So I'll look at season 1 with a lot of affinity going forward here. Rachel, final word looking back on season 1 for now.
Yeah, I have Sting right there. hanging on my wall.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you both said it so well. They had the highest of mountains to climb, and what I actually think they did, which in turn was the right thing to do, was I never felt a lot of fan service. I think they understood the fandom and the lore heads and those things, and I think that they themselves are to some degree or other, but I think they set out to tell a great story with great characters that had to touch a handful of things in order to live in this world and to pay homage to Tolkien and make sure that they're still carrying on his legacy and his word. But they just set out to do it in a way that was character first, emotion first, throw all the money to get the cinema quality, which you did above and beyond. Like I rewatched a little bit of episode 3 last night, and the first shots of Numenor still take my breath away. Like they really leaned into that, but more importantly, they leaned into the characters and made us care about them, new and old, and even the old characters in new ways. I still think Elrond is the MVP because of his relationship with Doran and Disa, but then without even having them in this episode, his relationship with Galadriel, it's like he just works so well with the people around him, and you get the internal and the emotion and the connection, and I just buy it every time. I didn't think they'd get me to care about the Southlanders after the first episode. I wasn't even sure necessarily about the Harfoots, but by the end of this, I am boxes of tissues in and just so thrilled that I've come to love these characters and these relationships as much as I have, and really just can't wait to see where they go from here. So honestly, huge gratitude and congratulations that they pulled to this season off. It's not for everybody. People will find things wrong with it and they'll go their own way. But for me, even as a big Tolkien lore head, I think they got it mostly right. And that just makes me so happy.
And I want to make a Casterly Talk Tolkien lorehead cheesehead hat we can sell.
But it's a thick book.
Yeah,
it's a tome.
Oh, that's beautiful. There you go. That's it. It's beautiful. And here's the thing: this show, Alden, you mentioned it. I'm doing it. I'm someone who's loved the movies for the last 20 years. I don't go into the wikis. I don't watch the YouTube channels as I do in Star Wars, Game of Thrones, other worlds. I've already begun doing that. I love listening to Rings and Realms and the team over there diving in deep. I've listened to some other channels. Oh, absolutely. I think this is going to start to pull in. And those casual fans, those fans who just I kind of like it. I think a lot of them will be pulled in. And then, like we said, not for everyone, but we focus on the joy here. And that is our time here today. We will be discussing more on just Rings of Power, doing a live Q&A very soon. Look for that. We'll get a big panel here and talk about ideas, theories, and looking forward to the future. Looks like 2024 is when season 2 might come out. Maybe that can get pushed up. I hate to think that when this show wraps up, the 5 seasons, I'll be in my early 50s. I'm going to have to accept that.
I had the same thought just now. Not about you, about me. I was like, I'll be almost 30. Okay.
Yeah. Be quiet.
Good night, everyone.
I think it hurt Rachel's and I's soul a little bit when he's like, my childhood when Faramir. It's like all generations, all points of view to make these shows work, and we absolutely celebrate those there. So we're out of here. We're out here right now. Don't forget, you can follow us here on YouTube, subscribe, hit the bell, do all those wonderful things, blah, blah, blah. But listen to the podcast over on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. Follow us on Twitter at Casterly Talk. We're on Facebook as well. Many other things possibly looking forward as we build this channel out in the future. We're talking about a Discord server, talking about other things as we grow. I cannot thank Alden Diaz enough for taking my call for adventure to come in here and help build out Casterly Talk with me a little bit more. And Rachel, we've known each other for a long time, and my schedule's been so crazy last year. And I remember I got a text from you like, hey, I wouldn't mind talking about Rings of Power this year. It's like, well, of course, I've got to make sure this happens. Let me clean up my act to get you in here. Always valuable to have your insights and your love of this series. So thank you for joining us on this adventure too.
Happy to. Absolutely thrilled to.
All right. You can, like I said, follow me if you want at Ken Napzok or my website, kennapzok.com. If you're listening today, I'm in La Jolla this weekend with Mark Ellis and Jen Sturger doing some comedy at Seattle at the end of the month, doing some comedy with Mark Ellis. Rachel, where can they follow you if they have some questions about where they can get the lore head that we're going to build?
I am on Twitter and Instagram at Rachel Cushing Levine, all one word.
That's right. Don't forget that Levine. I'm going to update my email contact very soon. Very soon. Alden, we'll see you as well, and Rachel too, possibly for House of the Dragon. Don't forget that show. We still have 2 more episodes to review there. Alden, where can they find and follow you?
You can find everything I do at that Alden Diaz on all the platforms, ThatAldenDiaz, where I'll be listening to Fiona Apple's Ring Song. And that's what I'll be doing for the rest of the week.
And Poppy's Walking Song. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Like I downloaded that one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Great stuff. So for Rachel Cushing Levine, Alden Diaz, Fiona Apple, and music from the 90s, this has been our look at Rings of Power, episode 8. We'll see you soon, friends. Bye.